turn to our loyal and lovely listeners who have so many questions that only you can answer. I tried, but, quote, beats me, it's unknowable, unquote. Apparently isn't an acceptable answer. First up is 12-12-24. Mike the Flash Sewall strikes again. Dear Chilly Manly Matt and Permafrost Dave Sim, although the day I checked, it was 18 degrees colder in Wisconsin than in Kitchener. So maybe swap those salutations? Could be the case. We've been having my kind of winter in Canada, where most of the time it's above zero, and when it snows, there's a light covering that you can't quite get it with a broom, but you don't have to break your back with a shovel getting it done. And a lot of time, the rest of it just melts the next day or the day after. I will take that all the time. Sorry, not a skier, not a skater. Go ahead.
We had a snowstorm right before Christmas, and living in the apartment, I have underground parking. I don't have to clean off my car. And Paula's car, she just brushed it off and then she could go, and they were pretty good about getting the plows in the parking lot and clean it up. But it was a weekend, and I looked out the window and it's just white everywhere, and I took a picture and put it up on Facebook with the caption, "It's beginning to look a lot like fuck this."
In the idiosyncratic Matt Dow Christmas spirit. In the early 80s, there was an offer from DC Comics for Cerebus. You write that it was a 6-figure offer. There are additional hints that it may have been for total control of Cerebus. I can find few details. Question for Dave. What year was the offer from DC? Was it Paul Levitz or Jannette Khan doing this negotiating? Was it a flat-out no from you? Or are there more juicy, gory, none of my business details on this historic bone? Thanks for answering all the deeply invasive questions. Mike Dodger Shirley MJ Sewall. And as is our habit, while I am reading this, and while we are rolling through this, we're gonna put pictures of Mike Sewall's restaurant up and try to make that into a Cerebus tourist destination. Maybe Mike could hold a mini convention in his restaurant in California, and see what that does for business if you tell people far enough ahead of time. Matt says, what does Matt say?
I recall that the first printing of High Society netted you more than the DC offer, and that was $150,000, if I'm not getting early onset Alzheimer's. So, Dave, nobody from the 80s works at DC anymore. Spill the tea.
Okay, and I will do so. I went through the Cerebus archive, and this is a 3-page letter from Paul Levitz, Executive Vice President of DC, dated March 5th, 1985, just a little short of 40 years ago. And I had Rolly scan it, as well as the really, really odd cover letter stationery that they were doing at the time, which doesn't really work, but if you've never seen it before, it's pretty interesting. And he's emailing it to you, so you'll be able to post it up on on a moment of Cerebus. So reading the letter, before I actually get into reading the letter, checking the history on it, I went back and looked at the latest Overstreet price guide to go, okay, when did ElfQuest start reprinting through Epic Comics? and that was August of 1985. So my recollection is, because I knew Archie Goodwin and Joe Duffy pretty well through Epic magazine, because they were printing the collaborations that Gerhardt and I were doing. So I would have heard that ElfQuest was going to be doing color reprints of ElfQuest through Epic Comics, and I would have heard about that at the time that it was being planned, which would have been probably the end of 1984, and thinking, oh, that's interesting. Do I want to do that? Or if I don't want to do that, why don't I want to do that? Do I want to do that with Epic Magazine? And I thought, well, okay, I know some people at DC. Let's see if they're interested in my idea, which was originally okay. I don't think the reprint is going to work that well. I don't know how it worked out for Wendy and Richard, but it was like those books were all published as individual books not that long ago, and ElfQuest did reprint the early issues of ElfQuest up until about issue 5 or 6. There's like third and fourth printings of those. I don't think I want to do that with Cerebus. One of the things was I don't want the value of the back issues going down, because now suddenly everybody can get the material in individual comic books. So you have Cerebus #1 first printing, Cerebus #1 second printing, Cerebus #1 third printing, Cerebus #1 Epic Magazine, that kind of thing. So what I was pitching to DC was, how about if Gerhardt and I do 3 miniseries of, no, we can figure it out, but let's say 4 issues for each miniseries. And what I will do is what I think is a merchandisable, commercializable 3 miniseries that this would probably make a good animated cartoon. This would make a good movie. This would make a good toy. This would make get Cerebus in costumes that would make really good action figures. That kind of thing, so that I continue to do Cerebus the way I want to do Cerebus, as a black and white comic book. And as Paul mentions in the letter, I was in a very unique circumstance as somebody who had 70 issues of a comic book already done, as opposed to, hey, can you publish my comic book, Mr. Executive Vice President? So that was what I was pitching to them. Then I flew down and had lunch with Jannette Khan and Paul Levitz and Dick Giordano and Bruce Bristow at the restaurant that was called the Top of the Sixes, actually across the street from 666 Fifth Avenue. Literally, that's where DC Comics used to be. And this was the Time Warner executive dining room, not the DC Comics lunchroom, because they were trying to impress me. And I was impressed. There's really nothing like being at the top of the Sixes on Fifth Avenue in New York City and going, okay, let's do lunch and let's talk about this. I remember coming out of the elevator across the street at 666 Fifth Avenue, because it's like, okay, I was in Bruce Bristow's office. Dick Giordano comes in. He's ready to go to lunch. Paul Levitz comes in. He's ready to go to lunch. Jannette Khan comes in. She's ready to go to lunch. And I forget who the freelancer was, but there was a DC freelancer that I knew reasonably well. And we hit the bottom floor, and the doors open, and he was there. And here's Dave with all of the heavyweights from DC Comics, and his jaw just dropped. And it's like, I can't explain now, I'll explain it later. And we walked across the street and then went up to the 970th floor, or whatever the top of the sixes was. And then I wrote my letter to Paul Levitz after this, explaining what my thinking was. And the letter that I got back is, Dear Dave, thanks very much for your letter of February 4th and for the depth of consideration you've given to our working together. I've been delegated by our collective group to reply on the basis of some lengthy discussions we've had of the ideas you raised. We think that many of the ideas you have for reaching out to Cerebus to animation, newspaper strips, and other areas are exciting. It would be fun to work together on them, as well as on the series of miniseries you propose. However, as we mentioned over the course of our lunch, there are two major philosophical problems that we have: long-term commitment and control over the property. We have taken these two problems, mixed them with our perception of your desires, and considered the unique position that you are in with Cerebus as the creator/publisher of a property now over 70 issues old. The result is a proposal unique in DC's history, which we feel, I always get the willies when I see that. Not feel, think. Let's not feel about this, which we feel reflects the unusual relationship we want to build between us. We propose the following. 1, Aardvark-Vanaheim will continue to publish the Cerebus series in its current format until you choose otherwise. All profits from this publishing will continue to flow to you. And I thought, well, that's darn generous of you. You'll let me continue to run my company. Number 2, DC will pay Aardvark-Vanaheim a non-returnable advance of $100,000 upon signing of an agreement under which we acquire all other rights to Cerebus. 3, DC will recoup the advance from royalties due you on our publishing, licensing, or media deals, but not from any page rates due you for new stories. Unlike any other advance we've offered, we would recoup the advance from only 1/2 of your earnings in any of these areas, thus providing an additional cash flow to you in the early years of our work together. That's a very polite way of saying we're going to milk this thing dry as quickly as we can, and before you run out of steam or popularity, so we make the maximum amount that we can. I'm going to try to do as little kibitzing on this, but 4, DC will begin publishing Cerebus with the 3 miniseries you proposed in your letter. You would naturally receive top rates as well as royalties under the DC royalty plan, covering the format in which the series was published. In brackets, in the case of newsstand Mando books, 5% of cover price on sales over 100,000 copies, page rates being roughly equal to the 5% on the first 100,000. Original artwork is returned to you, and in those rare instances where we fail to because it is lost or mangled, we compensate you. It's like, okay, there's a blast from 1985. You don't scan the pages and send digital copies. You sent the actual pages, and you lose things like the painted Toddleman's painted cover of Swamp Thing and his lady friend that just sort of disappeared. We don't know where it went. Would have been more sensible to say, for the price of negatives, you get negatives shot and send us negatives, and that way if we lose the negatives, it's you still got the original artwork. But that was never done at the time because the negatives were relatively expensive compared to what the page rate was. Look, we're only paying this much to reproduce the artwork. We're not going to eat the cost of the negatives, too. 5, over time, we would hope to begin reprinting the original Cerebus series, following your publication by some defined minimum amount of time. You would edit and revise the material as might be necessary for the reprinting to avoid legal troubles, and would receive appropriate compensation for your time as well as reprint fees. Currently $75 per page, which would be recoupable against the advance. I remember asking Paul, you're not really specific here. You would edit and revise the material as might be necessary for the reprinting to avoid legal problems. Can you give me a for instance? And his for instance was, you can't make Lord Julius look like Groucho Marx.
Okay.
Okay, so are we going to sit around and have an executive meeting on who we make him look like, or what we do with his mustache, or like if he has a yellow mustache instead of a black mustache, does that make it okay? So right away I was going, I'm not going to be comfortable sitting down and fixing anything that the DC legal department goes, this could be trouble, this could be trouble, this could be trouble. DC, number 6, DC would represent Cerebus for international rights sales, and you would receive 35% of our receipts from this recoupable against the advance. As we're seeing now, as has always been the case, and nobody else wants to talk about this, but Dave Sim, who always speaks the unspeakable, international rights are never that much money. If you end up getting $1,000 to reprint a comic book, you're doing really, really well. The odds are you're probably going to get 500, and out of that, I would get, $175. Whoopee! And if you have, let's say the DC, through the Licensing Corporation of America, which did their licensing at the time, did 10 different languages for Cerebus. The odds are it wouldn't break $175, but it always looks good. It looks like I'm going to get 35% of international sales. Why? That could be worth millions. No, it couldn't. Number 7, DC would represent Cerebus for media and product licensing, and you would receive 20% of our receipts from this recoupable against the advance. And it's like, again, it depends on how much they're paying to license it and what they're licensing it for and how many of them they're going to be doing. I remember sitting in Bruce Bristow's office, and he said, here's the catalog. Here's the Licensing Corporation of America. Here's all the products that they do. And it was probably about, 100, 150, 200 pages. And I'm flipping through it, and I'm going, I'm not seeing anything in here that I want to see Cerebus on. Number 8, we would work together on all these areas with your consultation and advice, but with DC free to conclude deals in our business judgment. It's like, well, there you go. There's corporate America at its finest, where I go, I don't think that's a good idea. And Paul Levitz goes, I do, so we're going to go ahead and do it. During the negotiation of our agreement, we would be willing to consider a list of products you consider inappropriate for Cerebus and to bind ourselves not to license them. That wouldn't have happened. It's consider a list of products. a Cerebus punching bag, like the old Popeye punching bag. I think that's inappropriate. Well, that's one of our easiest sells, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Number 9, by receipt, in quotation marks. I mean the actual amounts DC receives for the rights it sells or licenses. Already deducted would have been the commissions kept by agents, currency exchanges, or in taxes and the like. Our practices in this area are so restrained. How restrained are they? They're so restrained, notwithstanding our relationship to Warner Brothers, that I'm sure your attorneys and accountants would have no objection to them. And it's like red flags are going off on the field just about every direction for me, where it's like sells or licenses. Licenses, I would like to talk about it. I would definitely like to see a list, and I would definitely like to see all of the fees and everything that get deducted. Because, yes, you are Warner Brothers. You are a pimple on the butt of Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers, I mean, all of these corporations all have artistic bookkeeping. It's like, here's how much money you get, but this gets whittled down with this and this and this and this and this. But that's just, that's all in the fine print. You already signed it. Licenses, okay, so eventually I don't like how the deal went, and then finally DC goes, yeah, it's not really working for us either, so we're going to pull out of it. Another one would be, oh, they sold the license, and that's where you get into, well, why can't we do a Spider-Man movie? Why can't we do this? Well, because that license was sold, not licensed, 30 years ago. So it's still traveling around as to who owns that and whether they want to do anything with it. It's and none of this is talked about because it's like, all of these clauses will be confidential in the contract, non-disclosure agreement. Okay, so I can't tell anybody that the rights to a Cerebus animated cartoon were sold. I got 10,000, 15,000, and nothing was done with the animated cartoon, or one cartoon was done and then it was scuttled, and now it's just been tossed around like a hot potato, where everybody else is making money, but not me, because it's deemed that I sold those rights. Number 10, you will be the sole supplier of Cerebus stories and artwork to us as long as you desire to be, and to our licensees whenever possible. Whenever possible that's a loaded phrase too, where if I go, okay, I want Ian Garrett to do the packaging on that. If the licensee goes, we do those in-house. And that's just how our deal goes. In deals like media licenses, makes it impossible, and in others you might simply be uninterested in doing the work. And it's like, okay, but why would I be uninterested? And if I'm uninterested in doing the work, what is it that I'm likely thinking about the product in question? So there's the 10-point forms of, we're not at the contract stage, but, Indiana Jones, here's all the traps and pitfalls, and the giant round boulder rolling in behind you. Talk this over with your lawyer, which essentially I did. At one point, I thought, okay, I should talk to Wilf about this, and I showed Wilf the letter, and he read it, and I said, so just off the top, what do you have to say? I expected him to go down point form by point form and go, well, this one jumps out at me, this one jumps out at me. All the red flag, or most of the red flags I've already identified. Will's comment was, Do you have $100,000? I went, no. And he went, do you want $100,000? And I went, well, yeah. I mean, who doesn't want $100,000? And he just sort of shrugged like, well, in that case, just sign whatever they give you. And it's like, that's a lawyer's point of view, where an intellectual property is, until it's turned into money, there's no value to it. It's like you're trading your magic beans for actual cows here. I don't see why you would not just say, okay, drop the contract, I'll sign it, and I'll get $100,000. It's like, this is 1985. The $100,000 probably wouldn't have lasted until 1988, when it's your first $100,000. Paul goes on, our aim in putting this proposal together was to give you substantial money up front and the potential to earn a larger income from Cerebus in the future, while preserving your personal involvement with Cerebus and your control over his editorial future. At the same time, we tried to meet our philosophical goals for long-run commitment and control. Let me explain what stands behind those two goals in a little greater depth. First, DC has always operated on the basis of lengthy perspectives on the future. I know that given the kind of commitment you've made to Cerebus as a creative person, as well as a businessman, that this is something you can respect. We understand completely your desire to have a relationship with us, which will allow you to get a realistic sense of what we can do and how well we work together. Yet, we'll not marry the two of us forever. Unfortunately, we simply cannot see ourselves doing the right job in those circumstances. We really need a marriage to make the kind of commitments necessary to make Cerebus an important part of our business. Quite frankly, unless we make those commitments and put that kind of effort in, we don't think we'd be the right publishing company for you to work with from your perspective or ours. We recognize the difficulty this choice presents, but we hope the appealing aspects of our counter-proposal balance the difficulties. I'll just add parenthetically on that one that this is what I was pitching them on, was if these are separate stories, separate miniseries, and these are what you're licensing, then I get to see what you guys are able to do. I get to see what it is like to work with DC. And when we come to the end of the miniseries and you've gone, okay, we've done everything that we possibly could with them. Here's how much money we made. Here's how much money you made. Do we want to work together again on something else? Basically, I was saying, let's have a summer fling and see how things go. And Paul Levitz was going, no, let's get married and live happily ever after. Okay, where are we here? Yes. Second, DC has always kept the ultimate control over the properties it markets. We believe that we can do the best job of developing, publishing, and licensing properties with this control. Given the unusual nature of your own publishing of Cerebus, we have made unique limitations on our control in this proposal to try to work with your legitimate desire to keep control of your own creation. And it's like, well, that's darn nice of you. In trying to balance your desires with our own, we created our counter-proposal, realizing how different it is from your original. In the same spirit that we feel, again, that feel, you struggled to create a fair proposal which you felt met our needs. We have struggled to create one that met our perception of yours. I've laid out for you the philosophical dilemmas which prompted us to suggest this very different, though we feel equally fair arrangement, and are certainly open to any alternative you might suggest which resolve them. I hope this is a deal which makes sense for the two of us to make. DC strives, and we hope succeeds at being fair as well as effective in taking the creative product of individuals and developing it to its fullest potential. In doing so, we share the rewards with the creators while assuming the risks. You are an exceptional case of a creator who is also a publisher and who has made an extraordinary commitment to his property. As a company, we respect that deeply, just as Jannette, Dick, Bruce, and I each do on a very personal level, as admirers not only of your creativity, but of your dedication. Although it would be perfectly reasonable for you to retain control over Cerebus and to seek other alternatives for his further marketing, DC can work with you to do this job better than any other company. We are prepared to make an important financial and personal commitment to do so. We appreciate your consideration of this and look forward to speaking to you soon.
My first thought when you were going through the points was, come on, Dave. You know, if the multiverse concepts exist, there's a universe where you signed on with DC, and Cerebus is still, to this day, the face of Owen Corring's gray insulation.
Among other nightmares.
The other thought I had was when he got to the part about the marriage, I'm like, you're sending a letter to a guy that's barely a year and a half out of his own marriage, saying, hey, let's get married. Like, at that point, I'm sure you read that back in 1985 and went, marriage? Nope, I'm out.
Nyang, 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 nyang. Yes. There was definitely an element of that. In terms of comic art metaphysics, I'll also point out this is March 1985, which is at the same time that Kevin and Peter are starting to get into bed with Mark Friedman and Surge licensing. So it's interesting because they certainly had the much better deal. These things tend to crop up like a Las Vegas casino in metaphysical terms, where it's not a blackjack table. There's 50 blackjack tables, and everybody's having different luck, and there's different dealers, et cetera, et cetera. Kevin and Peter had the right idea, which was what I was trying to do, was to say, okay, here's what I'll let you guys have temporarily, and you'll see if this is worth working with Dave Sim, and Dave Sim will see if this is worth working with you, which was really the situation that Kevin and Peter had with Mark Friedman, except that Kevin and Peter weren't, their attitude was, we get to do comics, we're making a really good buck at this, so I was on the same page as they were in terms of, I remember, I think at the lunch, at the top of the sixes, and the last words that I had with Paul Levitz was, I don't, he was going, okay, how soon do you think, we could get this concluded? And I'm going, the problem that you're facing is I don't really need the money. I'm doing fine, which is the same situation that Kevin and Peter had when Mark Friedman pitched them, and other guys would pitch them on, we want to represent the Turtles. It's like, we're fine just doing comic books. We're making more money than we ever dreamed possible. And, we don't really need this. And it was Mark Friedman who went, okay, now tell you what, just you let me off the leash and let me go get stuff for you. And I'll come back and say, things like $500,000 for a breakfast cereal. Okay, I'm in. Breakfast cereal it is.
Well, and I was thinking about Kevin and Peter when you were going through the letter, because specifically for Dodger, because he asked the question, what would it have been like if Dave signed the contract? Well, go look at Mirage Studios' output from 1985 to 1995 of how many comics they published with the Turtles, and then of those books, how many had Kevin and Peter involved, and not necessarily together, individually. How many were Kevin's stories? How many were Peter's stories? Because I got the digital version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Ultimate Collection, and there's 7 volumes.
Right.
The 7 volumes. The 7th volume is all the back matter. It's posters and covers and preliminary covers and like I'm going through because there's Cerebus stuff in it, so I found it and it's kind of neat, but at the same time it's like there's no comics. And there's a little bit of commentary from Kevin and Peter about what this stuff is, but I was at the comic store and they had the 7th volume for like $40, and I'm like flipping through it, like maybe the digital version's missing stuff. And I'm like, no, this is exactly what I have at home, and there's no way this book is worth this much money. And
right.
And the 7 volumes, which is only actually 6 volumes of comics, goes up to like issue 19 or 20, and then the next volume starts at issue 43, and I'm like, whoa, where's the missing books? And it's, well, Kevin and Peter weren't really doing the book at that point because they were going in and signing off on the breakfast cereal and designing stuff for the toy line and doing this. And it's like, and in their commentaries, they're kind of admitting that, Kevin especially is like, yeah, I mean, when we did the book, it was great. And when we would go into the office and not do the book, it was like pulling teeth. Yes, we're making a lot of money, but at the same time, this isn't what we signed up for. And I'm going...
Right. Yeah.
And Kevin and Peter to me are the example of what would have happened if Siegel and Schuster had gotten the rights to Superman back right away, and had control of their character. And it would have been, well, they would have done some books, and then they would have gone where the money was. And like Cerebus was a monthly book for 26 years and change. The contract very much was worded as Dave and Gerhardt aren't going to do the book every month because they're going to take February off to go, okay, Cerebus shampoo, is this a good idea or is this not big enough of a check?
Right. Yeah, it's there are control groups. The thing is, like, there are variables, and it is, okay, this is the choices that Dave Sim made, and this is where they led. These are the choices that Kevin and Peter made, and these are where they led. And when I was talking to Kevin through the T8 campaign, and I said, when did it happen that you, because this was always the thing that concerned me, was going, I can either be the writer and artist for Cerebus, or I can be the chief executive officer of Cerebus Incorporated, but you can't do both. And I said to Kevin, like, when did that happen? And he said, well, it was pretty much overnight. I believe it was January 1986 when the Turtles animated cartoon went on, and then the toys spun off from that, and Surge Licensing was a world on fire. And I don't think Kevin was ever really happy again until he had gone through all of the Tundra money and lost all of the money that he did to Julie Strain and the divorce settlement, where Peter had to bail him out, and literally got to the point where, okay, I have to go back and write and draw comics. I might as well write and draw the Turtles for IDW. And he was happy as the proverbial pig in shit. And it's like, I always suspected that would happen, but never knew. Do you get to the point where when you do come back, you go, no, this isn't like it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. You can't go through that whole nightmare and then still just write and draw comics. And it's like, no, exactly the opposite. Whatever harrowing through hell that you've gone through, if you've got comic books in your blood, writing and drawing comics is the lifesaver. It's the I'm grabbing onto this, and this is the only thing that actually feels like a lifesaver.